The essence of the iron law of oligarchy, this particular facet of the vicious circle, is that new leaders overthrowing old ones with promises of radical change bring nothing but more of the same. Daron Acemoglu, Why Nations Fail, The Origins of Power, Prosperity, and Poverty. The lights and music of the fairgrounds never once dulled, even as the hours passed. The horrors of the past few days seemed to be a distant memory in their minds as they explored the many different avenues of the planet's cultural hub. They never did meet back up with Tix, but they figured he was more than fine on his own. It was late in the evening by the time they had left the fair. They walked back through the museum grounds and bid a good night to Lukas when they reached his cabin. Now it was just down to Lena, Beth, and Mason. The trio idly chatted as they followed the road.
Oh, I've got a good one. Worst fear.
Definitely drowning.
Getting sucked into the vacuum of space.
Wow, pretty similar answers. Both seem pretty unlikely, all things considered.
There's literally a lake right outside our back door.
And I've spent more of my life on ships than on planets.
Fair enough. Statement retracted.
What about you? Let's hear your worst fear.
Lena's face scrunched up as she searched for an answer.
I honestly don't know. I've never really given it much thought.
Really, there's gotta be something. Falling down a bottomless pit? A cave collapsing on top of you?
Those are definitely things that come to mind, but I don't know if I'd put them in the worst fear category. They just feel a little too simple, you know?
I think we have different definitions of the word simple.
Oh, I'm sorry. Basic, vanilla, typical? Are those more to your liking, my lady?
A notable improvement, my stalwart handmaiden. You have saved yourself 20 lashings.
Your generosity truly knows no bounds, your ladyship.
The trio walked until they reached Lena and Beth's cabin, where the two of them bid farewell to Mason, who made his way toward the mercenary company's cabins. Their first night in Libertalia was one to be remembered. It set the kind of tone that left them looking forward to the days that lay ahead. It gave them a newfound motivation for dealing with the responsibilities that were now on their shoulders. Both of them slept soundly that night. The following morning, Lukas brought them to the museum grounds and gave them a proper tour. Him and Lena bonded over the wide assortment of exhibits. She was absolutely awestruck by the variety of artifacts in his collection. Warrian art pieces, Osmer technology, and Bregian cultural attire. It was all so unbelievably fascinating to the young xenoarchaeologist. Little did she know that she hadn't seen anything yet. Lukas said he wanted to save the best for last, and Lena had felt the anticipation building throughout the entire tour. He led them to a building at the center of the campus. Its domed aesthetic matched the other buildings on the lot, but there was definitely something unique, something more grand about this one. It felt like the perfect centerpiece to the already impressive museum. Upon reaching the entrance, Lena could finally see why it was given such special treatment. A plaque erected right next to the building read, "The Long 87 and the Cultural History of the Lokdeng Empire." Now that definitely piqued her interest. Despite having total dominance over the galaxy for 87 years, the Lokdeng still managed to be an incredibly elusive and mysterious entity on the whole. To see an actual museum exhibit dedicated to them was very exciting to anyone who was interested in their species. Lukas led the three newcomers inside, but as soon as they entered, Beth stumbled and raised a hand to her head.
Whoa.
Lukas, Lena, and Tix stopped in place, all giving her a concerned look.
What's wrong?
Jesus, I can feel someone with a lot of psionic energy in here. More than I've ever felt before.
Lukas's concerned expression slowly shifted into an excited smirk.
Our resident psionic expert, come along. It's time you got acquainted.
He led them into the main hall of the exhibit. Lena's eyes darted around the room as she bore witness to displays of artifacts and murals depicting everything from the events of the Long 87 to the hierarchy of the Lokdeng Empire. The closest mural depicted the Milky Way galaxy, but the star system's borders were all off. It wasn't a modern depiction of the galaxy, but rather one that predated the Long 87. The Earth Systems Alliance didn't even exist back then. Their territories were simply labeled human systems on the map. There were also plenty of governing bodies that didn't even exist anymore. The Jaran Compact, House Salkin, the War-Yen Trade Alliance, all dead and gone in the wake of the Lokdeng Empire. There was something strange about the mural. As Lena examined it, she could feel a tingling sensation in the back of her mind. It felt similar to the tingling of a Lokdeng artifact, but it wasn't quite the same. There was something oddly distinct about it, but she couldn't put her finger on why. Then she heard it, a voice whispering in the back of her mind.
Step forth, one and all, and allow me to regale you with the tales of our fallen empire.
Lena looked around frantically for the source of the voice, but saw nothing. Beth and Tix had the exact same reaction, so at least she wasn't the only one hearing it. Lukas, on the other hand, looked rather amused by their confusion.
Long before our galactic dominance, the Brakex were the first to achieve spaceflight. We explored the galaxy and discovered the other species that inhabited it. We studied them when they were in their more primitive states, and set their civilizations on the paths that we desired. It is believed that our intentions were pure until we discovered the Holy World, the planet you know as Adamo.
As the voice spoke, Lena moved on to the next display. It was another mural, but this one depicted an unsettling forest. It was dark and dreary. The vegetation was thick, and the trees looked to be sprouting some kind of fungal pods. The plants were all intertwined with one another. The vegetation was so thick that even the sunlight was having trouble breaking through the vines and branches.
It was on this very planet that we discovered the Hidden Grove, the place where life begins, protected by the Guardians, creations of the Luhath, an ancient god of immense power and wisdom.
Images began pouring into Lena's mind. She saw the forest depicted in the mural. It surrounded her on all sides. She swore she could see shadows moving out of the corner of her eye. The forest itself almost felt alive. She suddenly felt something pulling her out of the strange vision, and before she knew it, she was back in the museum. When her disorientation faded, she could feel the next mural almost calling to her. It was a painting of a four-armed winged alien god.
The Luhath bestowed upon us many boons. Our natural psionic gifts became even more powerful. Our lifespans increased.
Lena looked beneath the mural and saw 3 Lokdeng artifacts on display.
It taught us how to bless holy relics with its powers. We used them to commune over great distances, to store information, to act as keys for our most powerful devices, and so much more. But soon it blessed us with its greatest gift.
Once again, she found her mind sending her somewhere else. Only this time, it was more than just mere images. It was so odd, almost dreamlike. She was honored to have been chosen by the mighty Luhath. It actually spoke to her. Of all of its faithful servants, she was among the privileged few to be chosen for ascension. It called them Parlen, a holy name for a holy people. She kneeled before the god's honored altar with her fellow Parlen, ready to hear what divine task the Luhath had chosen them for.
Ascension. A chosen few amongst us were blessed by the Luhath. It granted them the sight, and thus its will was enacted through them.
As if waking up from a dream, she was back in the museum. Her mind raced to make sense of what she just experienced, but she stopped herself short when she realized that her body had involuntarily moved while she was having her strange little episode. She was standing before the next display, which contained what looked to be a model of the massive tower at the center of Libertalia.
The chosen were instructed to build the first communion temple in the Luhath's honor. The true purpose of the towers was never revealed to us who were not chosen.
Next, a mural of an alien ship abducting passers-by on a lonely road.
The Luhath sought blood from every species in the galaxy, and the Lokdeng raced to quench its thirst. We abducted small numbers from every species' homeworld and brought them before the Chosen.
She moved to the next display, one she recognized immediately. It was the statues she had found over a month ago, the ones Logan had sold to Lukas, the entire reason Tix was able to come into contact with him in the first place. Lena initially believed the statues to be depictions of Lokdeng gods, but she found herself confused by the multitude of faces. There was a strange lack of uniformity in their appearances. Some of them lacked noses and mouths, while at least one of them had an uncannily humanoid face. In fact, now that she was looking at them again, one looked distinctly like the unknown alien species she had encountered in the artifact's resting place. Odd.
The physical forms of the Chosen slowly changed as the number of sacrifices grew. Their bodies had been altered by the Luhath, for what purpose we did not know. But their power and influence grew, as did their number.
An image of a mighty temple, perhaps an altar or even a throne room.
Soon we had built communion temples all across the planet, and the Luhath's thirst turned into gluttony. The first Chosen sat himself upon the throne of our empire. His fellow brethren became the Pantheon, his trusted counselors and advisors. They took the seat of power and shifted our civilization. For too long had we hidden in the shadows and allowed these lesser civilizations to rise up around us. The time had come to conquer. With the lesser civilizations under our control, we would be able to abduct their populations in mass droves to act as sacrifices to our mighty god.
Lena stepped toward the next display but halted when she heard something in the center of the room. She turned around and felt shock and awe as a massive holographic orb had suddenly materialized out of nowhere. It pulsated for several seconds before exploding into holographic dust. The dust fell to the floor and rematerialized into a holographic map of the entire galaxy, not too dissimilar to the map within the metal sphere.
Our empire spanned an entire galaxy, the whim of every species at our fingertips. Our goal was to spread the word of our gods, but in our efforts we became the gods. Most outside the empire have never even heard of the Luhath, a tragic sign of our faltering devotion.
Lena turned her attention back to the next mural. It looked like a depiction of two godlike figures, one light and one dark.
Then came the first schism. A new sect of Chosen began questioning the Luhath's teachings. They claimed he was false, vile and corrupt. They preached the teaching of a new god, Yavraral. The Emperor declared them blasphemers. He called upon the faithful to stamp out the lies of the false god wherever it crept its head.
The holographic map on the floor dematerialized once again and swirled its way back to the center of the room. It reformed into a crude image of Earth.
Then came the next schism. 20 years of dissidence on one of our thrall worlds. Blasphemers that could not be stomped out. A planet lost to us.
The hologram shifted to another planet. It was labeled as Gorthet, the Waryen homeworld.
Defiance bred defiance. Shame unto shame. Lost planets turned to lost systems. Systems turned to clusters. Clusters turned to sectors. The beginning of our end. War on all fronts.
Suddenly images flashed in her mind, ones she could only describe in quick, chaotic blurbs. War, tragedy, chaos, terror, loss, sorrow, regret. She felt something stir within her, emotions that belonged to someone else. She felt a pair of eyes on her that weren't there previously. Beth stood directly at her side, having stayed in lockstep with her the entire time. The two of them glanced at each other at the same time. Lena could read the expression on her face clear as day. She felt it too. And if the strange patter of bare feet on the floor was any indication, their mysterious observer was directly behind them now. The two women turned around slowly to finally come face to face with the creature that had no doubt wormed its way into their heads. Lena felt her breath hitch in her throat. It stood only about 4 feet tall. Its skin was gray and wrinkled. It had no mouth to speak through. And its eyes were so captivating, so hypnotic. 2 large, mesmerizing orbs that stared into her very soul. Tix took a step back, his demeanor clearly uncomfortable around the creature. Beth's hand instinctively went to the sidearm on her hip. Lena scanned the room for Lukas and found him standing near the entrance with a smug look on his face. And he was now flanked by another alien, one that was even more rare than the Lokdeng standing before her. An Osmer, a bipedal dragon-like species, tall, strong, and fearsome warriors. He towered over Lukas, wearing a similar amused smirk. Her attention went back to the Lokdeng, the stunned silence dragging out a little more than necessary. Then Beth finally spoke, her tone coming out a bit too hostile for Lena's liking.
Lukas, you mind explaining to me what that thing is doing in my head?
Lukas raised a hand to calm her.
Manners, Beth. Sherlock is a trusted associate and a good friend.
So you're making friends with Lokdeng now? No, okay. That's totally normal. No reason to be concerned at all.
Lena suddenly felt a hint of amusement? From the Lokdeng, perhaps?
Your fears are not unfounded, Beth Meyer. To have a creature so foreign touch your very thoughts must seem quite invasive.
Spot on. It's like you read my mind. Oh, wait.
But I assure you, your privacy will be respected in my presence.
Oddly enough, my concerns didn't just magically vanish.
Trust takes time to build, especially when your people have developed the reputation that mine have.
His eyes darted to Lena.
And what of you, Lena Weiss? You've been uncharacteristically quiet.
You're...
She cleared her throat.
This is a lot to take in. You're the psionic expert?
She felt another twinge of amusement coming from him as he widened his arms in an exaggerated gesture.
I am more than a mere expert, Lena Weiss. I educate, I entertain. Showmanship, my dear. The stage, the bow. It is all a rigorous process, one you bore witness to on this very day.
Lena breathed a confused chuckle.
I didn't know Lokdeng were so performative.
Most are quite dull, admittedly. I find that I am discovering a new side of myself among the younger species.
A Lokdeng with a calling for the arts? I feel like there's an excellent comedy in there somewhere.
The prospect is even more enticing when you add an Osmer into the mix.
He turned his head to the alien in question.
I believe introductions are in order.
The Osmer gave them a friendly smile before graciously bowing.
You may call me R. My line hails from House Bennu, though I doubt that would mean anything to you.
I know of your house. Bennu was House Salkin's greatest ally.
R looked at her with genuine surprise.
There are many who do not even know their own history. I am honored that you have taken the time to study ours.
You don't find many feudalistic societies these days, especially ones as large as yours.
I fear we are not so large anymore.
I'm sorry, that was thoughtless of me.
R raised a hand.
The genocide of my people is not your wound to heal.
Makes me question why an Osmer and a Lokdeng are so chummy, considering...
I do not blame Sherlock for the actions of his people.
He looked at the Lokdeng.
And he saved my life. That's all I'll say on the matter.
Sherlock and R are a package deal, a bit like you three.
Where did you even meet these two?
Would you believe that they defected and offered their services to the PSYOPS program?
Chairman Holt can be very persuasive.
Beth tilted her head.
That doesn't really answer my question. In fact, I think it just piled on more.
It is a long tale, young one.
But to answer your question, I was smuggling for the PSYOPS program at the time, back when they were more of an under-the-table kind of deal and discretion was paramount. I actually used it as an excuse to keep tabs on you.
Beth raised an eyebrow.
You kept tabs on me? I would have thought that the Alliance would keep you as far away from the facility as possible, even if you were working for them.
I had my connections. One of the doctors in your facility, she was the one who reached out to me. I guess you didn't recognize her when you saw her yesterday.
Beth bore a look of confusion as she tried to rack her brain around who he was referring to, but Lena beat her to it.
You mean Amy?
Lucas nodded.
She mentioned how surreal it was to see you again after all this time.
Beth looked as if she was mulling that information over in her head.
Well, that's, unexpected to say the least. Though I'm not surprised I didn't recognize her. I do my best to forget that part of my life as much as possible.
Still, that's a pretty big deal, isn't it? I mean, can someone just leave the PSYOPS program like that?
Technically, no. So, probably best not to go shouting that information around every street corner if you can.
Gotcha. Our lips are sealed.
Not to intrude, but there are other matters that require our attention.
He turned his large eyes onto Lena.
Lena Weiss, the artifact you discovered. I've never seen anything quite like it. Would you mind demonstrating how you managed to activate it?
Of course.
Lena eyed Lukas as he approached her with the artifact in hand. He held it out to her and she took it without hesitation. She performed the same song and dance as before and activated the artifact. Surlocke's expression was hard to read, but she picked up an inquisitive spark in his eyes as he studied the holographic map.
Fascinating. Are you aware of which of our networks you're connected to?
Lena tilted her head.
Are there multiple Lokdeng networks?
All Lokdeng are connected to the Emperor. He is the grand vessel of the Luhath. But there are also sub-networks as well. Every Parlin is a vessel of one of our gods. They act as patrons to the Brakex, those who were not chosen, such as myself. The Parlin choose which Brakex to take into their sect and connect with them in a sub-network. In this hierarchy, we all serve the Luhath first and foremost, but we also serve a secondary god depending on which Parlin we are connected with.
So you think I'm connected to one of your sub-networks and that's why the artifact responds to me but not you?
Precisely. This process wasn't a common one in our empire. I've been delving into our archives, searching for any clue as to what this relic could possibly be. It is said that those who are chosen to become Parlin are to undertake a pilgrimage to the Holy World. The exact details of this pilgrimage are kept hidden from Brakex such as myself, but it is well documented that the Parlin visited the communion temples before undergoing their transformation. How that relates to the relic, I cannot say.
What about what did you call them? Communion temples? What are they exactly?
Places of worship. It is where the Parlin would commune with the gods.
That can't be all they are, right? I doubt your Frunshaw friends are interested in occupying Lokdeng churches.
An astute observation. It is very likely that the temples are more than mere decoration. Perhaps they are an anchor between us and the gods.
Lena fixed Surlocke with a curious look.
Not to insult your faith, but do you personally believe in the gods?
All thinking creatures have their faiths. I do not expect you to take the stories of our gods quite so literally, but there is an undeniable truth in our beliefs. The powers that were granted to the Parlin are observable proof. I believe it was granted by divine beings, but you may feel more comfortable in other possibilities. Perhaps the towers are beacons created to enhance psionic resonance. Perhaps they are connected to mortal creatures that are simply far more powerful than us. In all possibilities, the outcome remains the same.
So, the Parlin, they entered the temples and emerged with new powers?
I'm afraid the archives are not clear. Visiting the towers is part of the pilgrimage, but when the transformation actually occurs is a mystery.
And these Parlin are chosen by the gods? They start off as Lokdeng, but undergo a physical transformation?
And a psionic transformation as well. Their powers are vastly superior to ours.
I think I saw some of them in the ruin. Dead ones, I mean.
Truly. Though I suppose it's not the strangest occurrence. The first schism branded most Parlin as traitors to the Empire.
There were dead Lokdeng, too. It looked like they were fighting over the artifact.
A holy relic, perhaps. If the Parlin themselves sought to protect it, then it must be of significant importance.
I feel like we already pieced that one together.
Of course. The real mystery is what the Frunshaw plans on doing with it.
They seem to know a lot about it. Logan told me that his buyer knew it was sitting on an altar. It sounds like they have a first-hand account of what happened.
I should probably also mention that Logan revealed some pretty damning information about his buyer. Turns out this Hesh guy he was dealing with was an old protege of his. It's not all that relevant right now, but I figured I should throw it out there.
We can toss it in the notes bin for now. It is admittedly a bit strange to see them working with a former Zakira leader.
They're Lokdeng defectors, right?
Lena looked at Surlocke.
Do you have any guesses as to why your people would be working with him?
There appears to be some confusion. Lokdeng is not the name of our species. It is the name of our empire. The Frunshaw is composed of many species. Ausmer, Jar, Warrian, even humans. I'm afraid I'm as blind to their motives as you.
Oh, so does that mean Brakex is actually the name of your species?
Indeed. Though most of the other races will continue to refer to us as Lokdeng, it has become something of a colloquial mainstay.
I'm learning a lot today, so we have no clue on their motives, we don't know what the artifact is, the temples are a complete mystery, and currently we're a bit blind on where exactly the map is pointing us to.
We're off to a great start, guys.
Which is why we take it one step at a time. The cartographers are waiting for us in the guild hall. With their help, we can hopefully cross following the map blindly off the list.
It's a start. Fix one problem and hope it leads us to a solution for another.
It's what we've got to work with. Let's step on over to the guild hall and discuss it with the others.
Lead the way.
And with that, Lukas led them to the Adventurers Guild Hall on the museum grounds. According to Lukas, it was his personally assembled team of specialists, all coming together in the pursuit of uncovering all of the mysteries and secrets of the galaxy. It helped explain where all of the artifacts in the museum came from. The group entered the guild hall and were greeted with organized rows of excavation equipment, maps, and other bits and bobs lining the walls. Further inside was a meeting room where a group of individuals all gathered around a table with a hollow map at the center. Lena immediately recognized a few of them. Lauren, Sam, and Amy were amongst the group. Also present was another Waryen who greeted them with a friendly demeanor, a Breg downing a bottle of brandy and looking awfully tipsy, and two Olgeks, humanoid aliens with bone-like exoskeletons and a knack for underground exploration.
The guests of honor have arrived.
Amy gave Beth a warm smile when she saw her.
How's the stomach?
Beth gently patted her abdomen.
Still holding together. No sudden or cataclysmic ejections of my organs, so I'd say we're on the right track.
Amy chuckled at the added flavor in her answer.
Fingers crossed it stays that way.
She looked at Surlock as he entered the room from behind the rest.
I see you met the psionic expert. I hope the reaction wasn't anything too noteworthy. I'd hate to have missed out on it.
Well, no guns were drawn, so it was at least better than last time.
It was a perfectly reasonable reaction.
One of the Olgeks said defensively. The other Olgek looked amused by his outburst.
Shooting Surlock in the head would have been reasonable by your standards.
Lukas held up a hand to shush them.
Maybe introductions are in order before you start getting too comfortable.
These bastards wouldn't know common decency if it plucked their feathers,
the Breg said as he shook his head. Lena raised an eyebrow at its unusual accent.
Embarrassing, the lot of you.
Beth blinked a couple of times before speaking.
Does everyone else's translator give him that accent, or is it just mine?
The second Waryen sighed heavily.
No, we all hear it. Icarus here supplies the guild with weapons and occasionally explosives. If it's black market or back alley stuff, he's likely got a way of getting it. Though he likes to combine that with a rather...
He eyed the bottle of brandy sitting in front of the Breg in question.
Carefree personality.
So, an alcoholic arms dealer.
Don't get all high and mighty on me, misjudgmental. I knows weapons front, back and sideways. So what if I enjoy the drink every now and again? You know, they say the Lokdeng taught Bregs how to make brandy to stop them from conquering the galaxy first. You should be grateful that there's an elixir strong enough to temper the inferno blazing inside of me.
He took a big swig of the brandy as if it emphasized his point.
Oh yes, you've definitely got the makings of a fine conqueror, Icarus. On to more interesting matters, I am Stogril. I supply the guild with items for their excavations. Tools, packs, tents, food. Those kinds of things.
Lauren nodded in affirmation.
These two keep us supplied with material items.
He pointed towards the two Olgeks.
While these two plot our course.
One of the Olgeks nodded towards them with a friendly expression, while the other remained stoic. The friendly one spoke first.
A pleasure to finally meet you. I'm Niels, and this is my brother Eckhard. I heard you have a map for us.
I do.
Not to rush through the pleasantries, but would you mind showing us?
Lena looked at Lukas, and he gave her a nod. She stepped forward and activated the artifact. The two Olgeks leered at the map with intense curiosity. Eckhard, the stoic brother, pointed at the pinging signal.
Northeast,
he said before pointing to a mountain between the pinging signal and the new orange "You are here" signal. His brother got to work sorting through the map on the table.
That's the voiceless pinnacle.
Frunshaw territory. That's a 2-day walk. Maybe only half a day to get over the mountain, then 2 to 3 more to reach the signal.
We can't take vehicles.
They'd see us if we flew in, and we're not getting any ground vehicles over that mountain. Still, we could cut off at least a day's travel before having to abandon our vehicles. So, a 3 to 4 day trek in total.
Straight through Frunshaw territory. This feels like a rather large gamble.
You know we can't leave this alone, Law. Whatever's out there is worth the risk.
You say that, but we don't even know what we're looking for.
Beth nodded in agreement.
He's right. We've got a lot riding on this being a worthwhile endeavor. Are we absolutely sure there's nothing else we can do?
Beth left the question open to the entire room, but she received no response.
Don't everyone jump in at once.
It's not as if we haven't discussed this to death already before you came along. The possibility always existed that we would have to brave Frunshaw territory. Unfortunately, an on-foot expedition is the most inconspicuous.
It's also the most dangerous if we get caught. My crew can handle a few small skirmishes, but not an entire army bearing down right on top of us.
As long as we avoid any of their settlements, that won't be an issue. Eckert and I can ensure we keep a wide berth.
Still, if Mora gets wind of this, it spells certain doom for us all.
Let the squid-faced bastard come at us. That alien fecker could use a good strangling with his own tentacles.
And this is why we tend to keep you away from the expeditions.
No antagonizing the Frunshaw.
Buzzkills, all of you.
Just to clarify, Morag is the name of the clan, but it's also the name of a person too?
Every clan is named after its leader. Morig is a jar, and a particularly nasty one at that.
A lot of bad rumors about that one. I heard he keeps an exotic line of concubines of various different species. Quite the charming lad.
But the rumors are of no concern. Morig is a conniving snake. He's clever and knows how to get what he wants.
Which is why we're taking the cautious approach. We plot our course, make the trek out there, and figure it out from there.
It's sounding a lot like our plan to get off of Etheria.
Lucas looked at her sympathetically.
I know it's not ideal, but I fear the alternative more than the risk.
Careful what you wish for.
Lucas is right, though. It's not as if Libertalia has any kind of standing army. If this is a chance to prevent a war with the Frunshaw, then it's one we must take.
For what it's worth, I agree. I know I only just got here, but it's obvious that finding this artifact has opened the doors to something so much bigger than I could have imagined. I want to see this through, to reach the conclusion of this journey I've already started, if nothing else.
The girl speaks truth. This is the path to something far greater than ourselves. We have a duty to see it through to the end.
Agreed. If you want to stay behind, so be it. But this expedition is happening regardless.
Sam looked between the map on the table and the one projected by the artifact, before nodding his head.
My team will be ready as soon as you give the word.
Surlock stepped forward.
And I would be remiss to not offer my expertise on the journey.
His Ozmer companion saddled up next to him.
And I go where Surlock goes.
That's the spirit. Let's find ourselves some hidden Lokdeng treasure.
Lucas looked at Lauren, who simply shrugged.
You won't need a pilot, but I can't allow myself to be left behind. Risks be damned.
Niels clapped his hands together.
It's settled then. Eckhart and I will plot our course. Icarus and Stagrill will get us the gear we need. Magnus Company provides the protection, and the rest of you provide the expertise.
Lena couldn't help but feel impressed. It was actually one hell of a team that Lucas managed to pull together in the pursuit of this mystery. And she had the honor of being a key part of it. There was no doubt in her mind. Uncovering this mystery would be the most important thing she's ever done in her life. She felt the drive to solve it in her very core, and the time would soon come for them to embark on their journey. 2 days of preparation is what they agreed on. 2 days of looking at maps, of getting acquainted with Icarus's black market weapons, of meeting the rest of Magnus Company for the first time. Near the end of those 2 days, Stagrill had called her over to look at the gear he had acquired for their expedition. She sifted through the items and grabbed what she thought she would need. She paused when she saw several rope ascenders sitting in a pile. Her mind raced back to how this journey began, and she found herself reminiscing on how much had really happened over the course of only a few days. Not even a week had passed, and her life had been so drastically altered in that minuscule amount of time. She wondered if the change to her life would change her as well, if she'd be unrecognizable in another week. Only time would tell, but for now she would learn from her past mistakes. She grabbed 2 ascenders and hooked them to her belt. Broken equipment wouldn't be slowing her down this time. The expedition would be embarking first thing in the morning, and Lena was ready to finally get to work.